back to Just Energy Radio with Dr. Rita Louise.
Hello and welcome back to Just Energy Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Rita Louise, and thank you all for staying tuned to the second hour of the show. Don't forget, Just Energy Radio is brought to you by SoulHealer.com, where you can find out about all the products and services I offer, including medical intuition evaluations, energy healing, and clairvoyant readings. Plus, there's tons of products and articles and YouTube videos. There's tons of stuff there, so check it out. One announcement that I made at the beginning of the last hour that I want to make again. So this coming Monday, we are continuing our conversation with Kathleen Martin and Denise Stone about the alien abduction phenomena. And I'm going to be the rotating host this week on Epic Radio. And so please do tune in. And if you missed the first episode, it was really interesting. And we're continuing the conversation. So please join us Monday evening. Anyway, so in this hour, we're going to be speaking with Jim Self about mastering alchemy and the shift. And so let me tell you a little bit about him and get him on the air. Jim Self has been leading seminars on personal energy management and the tools of mastering alchemy for almost 30 years. Over the last 20 years, this awareness has expanded into the relationship of the archangels, ascended masters, and teachers of light. The tools and information presented in the program, Mastering Alchemy, is a co-creation of these relationships. So he has a new book out that's called, What Do You Mean? The Third Dimension is Going Away. And his webpage is masteringalchemy.com. So please welcome Jim Self. Hey, Jim, how are you?
Hey, Rita, nice to be with you. Thanks for having me here.
Well, thanks for coming on the show and spending some time with my listeners. And I thought your title was kind of interesting and the concept was interesting because, as I'm sure you know, we just passed December 21st, 2012, which we called Happy Mayan Fool's Day here on the show. And I think a lot of people were really waiting for something to happen. Either the gloom or doom scenario or, poof, now we're little spiritual beings floating around with wings or something. I mean, I'm not really quite sure what people believed. So what was your experience of that? Or what do you think? Do you think that date actually signified something? Or do you think that it was just a bunch of hocus pocus? What's your feeling on that whole concept of a shift having occurred at the, in or around that time?
Well, I have much more than a feeling, having been really intimately involved in it. My relationship is very conscious with the archangels, the ascended masters, and the beings of light. I mean, sitting here, the conversation could involve them just as easily as involving you. That was a period of time where a number of things happened. It was not a random event. It was not something that just happens every once upon a time. It was a very specific set of things. Two things happened at that period of time. And maybe we can get into a little bit of background explanation to set it up in a few minutes. But okay. Simple version is you basically changed the channel on the television. You got Channel 4 having no concept that Channel 5 on the television even exists. Two completely different vibrational frequencies of transmission of light, which is what a television radio transmission is, completely oblivious to each other. One of the things that happened, that had to happen first, and again I'll explain in a minute, is what we know as the third dimension, which is much more than the earth or you sitting here in a chair. That third dimensional game the door had to be closed on that game. Everything that you know in a certain context is simply no longer available to you. And what that is anger, rage, resentment. Now, as soon as I say that, people go, hey, I'm still angry and rageful, or at least I know somebody else who is. But I'll make sense of that in a minute. But that third dimension, a huge magnetic structure that held things very rigidly in place, the door was closed on 12/12/12. In the period of time between 12/12, 12/21, 22, there was a opening, an escalation of energy. And if I made it simple in one word, you were given your freedom for the first time you've ever had it. But the good news is you have your freedom. The bad news is you have your freedom. And what do I do with this? Because I'm used to being very awkward in reaction to my environment, my relationships, in relatively an awkward way. What I mean by awkward is if you hold emotions like anger, rage, resentment, jealousy, if you get offended by how people move around, those vibrations, those words, those emotions are part of what was off balance in the third dimension. They were very much part of the third dimension. Those structures no longer are available to you. However, you have built up a whole structure of beliefs and habits and repetitious patterns that are very unconscious. We just open mouth, blurt out statements. And so those are still in place, but the foundation is not in place. You can do things now that you could not do before December 12th. But understanding how that all works is really a whole shift in consciousness, hence the definition of the shift of consciousness.
I like your concept about, that I'm not even sure how to put it into words, about the change and not having that energy be available. I've never really thought about it in that way, because
Right.
I mean, for myself, it's like, someone will cut me off driving and sometimes it'll piss me off. But then I find that there are a whole lot of other things where, I think one of my new favorite lines is, well, it is what it is, like something really super crappy happens. And I go, well, it is what it is, where I think a year ago, I don't know that I would be as accepting of it.
Yes. The funny thing about getting cut off on the freeway is the person cutting you off, who was unconscious driving along the freeway, realized that their exit was just up there, and it's so like, oh, sorry, lady, I'm going to miss my exit. And while you are being enraged at that person, now not you, of course, but somebody else would do this, being enraged at that person, all of a sudden they realize, holy geez, my exit is coming up. Sorry, I got to get over there. And you do exactly the same thing. But we're very conditioned to blame, to throw energy, to point at others, and not really understand that those same constructs are in our space all day long too. So there's a shift here, and I'll be happy to explain it in more depth, but try to make it very simple at the same time.
So you were going to explain some of the background about what has happened. Actually, a question, I'm going to start here. You said that what happened was not just about this cycle of time, that there was something very deliberate that happened. What did you mean by that?
I meant by that let me make a statement right here, and I will explain it over and over, is thoughts are electrical, emotions are magnetic. Very big deal. What happens is that in that dimensional structure, after the fall of consciousness, which is an enormously amazing story, in order for being simple, the earth not to gone into oblivion, it was more or less caught at a certain stage of the fall and was held very rigidly so it didn't fall further. In that rigid construction, there was nothing unconditional. It was, this is how it's going to be. And there was a tremendous electromagnetic field, very rigid, that held the earth in place for many, many eons. as time kind of went on and the opportunity to release some of that magnetic field, we began to operate differently. And again, that's not where we're going to go. That's a huge story in itself. But in order to hold the earth and hold humanity in a place in that fall, we lost a lot. You lost 90% of your brain, or some levels that, like, you lost your freedom in that ability to be a spirit in a physical body. You lost your structure, your ability to freely create and enjoy your experiences. So as that third dimension was structured, see, if you think about the third dimension, fourth dimension, fifth dimension for simpleness as a box.
You know, I don't have any bad memories of anything bad. Anyway, Jim, so you were talking about the fall, energetic fall into the third dimension, and you were kind of in the middle of that piece of conversation. Maybe we can pick it up there.
Sure, very easy. So there's, let's consider that the third dimension, fourth, fifth dimension are in boxes for simplicity purpose. And mostly what I'm creating is a concept to consider here. Mostly a concept most have never considered. But in real simple terms, this definition or this concept called third dimension has really nothing to do with the trees, the plants, the chair you're sitting in, the house you live in. That's all form. It has nothing to do with a dimension. It exists in the fourth dimension. It exists in the fifth dimension. It's simply form. So in the box called third dimension, there are rules and structures that govern the operations and the movement within that box, as in the fourth and the fifth. But the third dimensional box is very rigid. It's very conditional. There is nothing unconditional in the third dimensional box. No unconditional love. Third dimensional box. Now let me make one caveat. You are also living in a fourth dimensional space simultaneously. But in the third dimensional box, there are numbers of characteristics about it. One of the predominant characteristics is called linear time. Now, the average person never even challenges or thinks about time in any other way than past, present, future, and then you die. But in real terms, time is an application. It's not a fixed constant. And when you understand how to use time, you get very different results, as I will show you in the fourth and fifth dimension. But in the third dimension, past, present, future, and then you die. When you think about or observe how people live their life, to a great extent, there is a very tiny slice of present time, but the preponderance of their attention is in the past and in the future. And in that construct of in the past, in the future, there is kind of two structures. One is, I hope what happened to me in my past doesn't happen to me again in my future. Or the other construct is, they told me if I would do X, Y, Z, I would be successful in my future. Both of those constructs are very much built into an external point of observation for validation or protection or some level of preventing. So one of the things that happens is, as I hold my attention in, I didn't like what happened to me, and I hope it doesn't happen to me in the future, that concept called the law of attraction, which is flawless. And it simply says, I know everybody knows about the law of attraction, but what it says is, what you put your attention on, I, the universe who adores you, will provide for you. The shortcoming in that is the universe doesn't understand English, French, Spanish, and German. What the universe understands is vibrational frequencies of thought and emotion. So if on this journey, about this shift, one of the things that is also fundamental is you cannot take your baggage with you on this journey. You cannot take "I'm not okay" with you. The reality is, it is impossible for you to be not okay. Absolutely impossible. I'll even go one step further. All those bad things that you think you've done, all those mistakes that you think you've made, I will guarantee you, you have never, ever failed once. You have never really made a mistake. You have gotten outcomes because you tried something and it didn't really get you what you wanted. But as a spiritual being in a body, you are in an exploration of figuring things out. But what happens is when you create something and you think you're a 14-year-old girl in high school and you are trying to fit in, as an example, fill in your own blank, of fitting in with all the other high school girls, and you tell a funny joke. But all of a sudden the funny joke isn't funny according to the other girls. It's really stupid and you're not really somebody I want to hang out with anyway. Have you ever had one of those moments where you thought you were doing something correct or you were exploring and then you either got caught or accused or it didn't work, you were embarrassed? The interesting thing about those moments is in that one moment, your whole life gets created in the future. You start to create a different path. What you simply say is, "Oh, I'll never do that again because I was embarrassed." And so you create a past time moment as you progress through your present time experience, the only place you live, and you say, "Well, I'm never going to tell a joke again because if I do, I'm probably going to get laughed at like I did way back then." Does that make any sense?
It does.
So what we do is we have all of this baggage that we've created in our process of exploring ourselves. What we've done also in the laws of the physical humanness of who we are, not the spiritual alignment in the heart, is we've created constructs like right and wrong, and good and bad, and should and shouldn't. And then we basically take what we think we should be doing based on mom, dad, teacher, minister, let's make them all okay. They told me that we hang out with these people, we don't hang out with those. We go to this school, we don't go to that school. We eat this kind of food, we don't eat that kind of food. So right from the beginning, we're conditioned to view life through other people's points of reference, not that alignment, that guidance system within our own hearts. How many people do you know that say, "Well, I'm a doctor, but I really would have liked to have been a guitar player"? People wind up doing what the external world says, third dimension. It's an interesting thing. There is something we call the rational mind. The rational mind, in terms of your spiritual awareness, is a very tiny little thing. Your rational mind has a very specific set of purposes: to keep you safe and have you fit in. And so have you ever had a thought where you wanted to jump off the cliff and fly, whatever metaphorically that is, but I can't do that because what would they think of me? But instead, that moment that you have that thought, that passion, that desire, that wanting, you simply are in your own vibrational field of love and alignment. This is who I am. But the rational mind says, they aren't going to like it if you do this. So consequently, third dimensional box, we spend a lot of time looking at our past right, wrong, good, bads, should, shouldn'ts, and conditionalities, and make sure that we live our life by those going into the future so we don't offend others or we don't embarrass ourselves. When in fact, we spend most of our attention in the past conditioning the future, worrying about the future, hoping into the future. So that third dimensional time structure is very conditional, and it's past and future. When you get into the present time moment, and you do, in the third dimension, it usually is when the thing you don't want to happen, that you're really wound up on, that you're holding a lot of attention on, and the universe is saying, well, gee, hi, Rita, nice to see you again this morning. How are you doing? And what the universe looks at is, how is the Ritas of the world, the Jims of the world, wearing their conditionality, their thoughts, and their emotions? And the universe says, well, Jim must love this game of victim because he's playing it again this morning. So I, the universe who loved Jim, will not interfere with his game one iota because Jim has free will. I will give Jim exactly where he's vibrating to have another experience at his game today. Does that sound familiar? I mean, watching people?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say it's reflected in my life at all. Because,
No.
It's perfect and everything.
Yeah.
I mean, I have made, and well, I'm going to put this out as a question, because one of the things that I've noticed this year, I'll say this year, that it just seems like it's been kind of rapid fire. It's like one thing happens and some, and there always is issues going on, but it just seems like this past year, it's even more intense. So my rationale to it, or my rationale, my impression of the whole thing is it's kind of like spirit is kicking our butts so we can just take anything that possibly could get thrown at us, because we're forced to just kind of surrender and go with the flow, because if we got upset with everything that happened, we would just be upset 24/7.
Yeah, you're very correct. And there's even more interesting, it's even more fascinating than that. So let me add one more piece and then see if we make this very simple. In the fourth dimensional reality, there is 3 simple pieces that are different than the third dimensional reality. First, time in the fourth dimension, kind of right where we're playing right now for the sake of discussion, is present time. There is no past, there is no future. We're right here having an enjoyable conversation, right here, right now. The second thing that happens is in the third dimension, in that moment of when you realize, oh, geez, this wasn't supposed to happen. Third dimension, you're very much in present time, but you're in a reactionary present time. Oh my God, it wasn't supposed to happen. There you are. In fourth dimension, a word that you're very familiar with comes into play when you're in present time, and that is choice. You do not have choice in the third dimension. You begin to have choice in the fourth dimension, where you can say, whoa, this is terrible, this event that's going on, or my stuff is really terrible, but I am not my stuff. And I can choose to put my finger in that light socket, or I can observe that and not engage in it and make a different choice. The third piece of information, funny word, huge part of the game, is the word paradox, which simply means what was true a moment ago may not be true now, and what was false a moment ago may not be false now. So when you have in third dimension an experience with somebody, you label them as bad, dishonest, not okay, I'll never talk to them again. And then 30 years later, you run into them, third dimension, you say, oh, you, I remember you. And you judge them based on what you judged them 30 years ago. Where in the fourth dimension, they show up on your doorstep and you say, I remember you, but how can I help you? What can I do with you right now? You deal with it in present time. A very big conceptual shift and a very important energy shift to play right there. To answer your question about getting your butt kicked, everybody's doing it. A very simple thing is happening, and you have to think through this easily, is time is collapsing. It is not going faster. What I mean by that is if it took you 5 minutes every day to walk from point A to point B, you just kind of know that feeling. It's an internal rhythm. You do it every day. But with time collapsing, where you had 5 minutes yesterday, let's say you only have 3 minutes to make that same transition. Time is collapsing. Now, in order to get to point B, you're starting to feel like I'm running out of time. I don't have enough time. I have to go faster to get to my point B. Time is collapsing and has, to a great extent, third dimensional time, collapsed into the present moment. And so the only place you can make decisions is in the present moment. And you cannot take your baggage with you on this journey. No one can step into a fifth dimensional consciousness and beyond carrying rage, anger, jealousy, resentment, etc. Just can't go there carrying that kind of erratic weight. Am I making sense so far?
You lost me a little bit with the fifth dimension. The fourth dimension I totally got. But I got a little bit lost, so can you maybe explain it in a little bit different way?
So let me define fifth dimension. And everybody wants to be here. Absolutely, I'll make a 100% statement right up front. Every one of you will say, yes, I want that. The fifth dimension vibrates in words like cooperation, co-creation, respect, beauty, dignity, gratitude, appreciation, joy, ease, laughter. Anybody not want to go there? No.
It would be nice.
Okay, but let me be very clear. Those are the vibrations of the fifth dimension and much more grandness. But you can't think beauty. You can only feel beauty. You can have a concept of it. You can see it. You can label it. You can simply say, wow, that's beauty. But it's very hard to see a Yosemite Falls in the May when you come around the corner in one point in the valley, and here's this 2,500-foot waterfall with blue sky and flowers in the meadows. It's very hard to go, oh, that's very beautiful, Agnes. No emotion. Beauty is an emotion, is a feeling. So are all those words, gratitude and appreciation. Those vibrations are the level of what the fifth dimension operates on in its structures. The moment you go into rage, jealousy, anger, past, future, you simply fall out of the fifth dimension. Nobody ever kicks you out. So as this time is collapsing into the present moment, you and I both know, and your listeners know, that you only live in the moment. There is no past. There's a past present time moment where you had an event that had a thought and an emotion involved in it. But the only place you can feel or experience an emotion is in present time. You can't feel sad 20 years ago. You can put your attention on the feeling of sad, but you feel it now. You can't feel it in the past.
Great observation. Hey, this question came from the chat room from Lisa, and it kind of fits with what we're talking about, so I want to insert this here.
Sure.
Because there's a little bit of conversation about it in the chat room. So the question is, does the guest have an idea about all the political turmoil, exposés, and whistleblowing related to the 2012 shift, and what we're talking about this transition from a third dimensional world into a higher level of being?
Yes, absolutely. Actually, the same answer. You cannot take your baggage with you. And in order to step into beauty and well-being, you kind of have a sense of what that feels like. You can't take your lies, your deceit, your domination, your slavery, your control with you. Let's just make a simple assumption for the moment. There are no bad people. But there is a lot of pain, and there's a lot of fear, and pain and fear talk real loud and operate in both pain and fear. So if I'm afraid of dealing with my own well-being and my own ease in walking around the world, a lot of times I'll make up stories, lies, and then I'll live out those lies and stories. So what you're in the process of seeing is the collapsing of the third dimension structurally that cannot go into the fifth dimension. So you are seeing all of the whistleblower things. You are about to see a significant shift in how you understand financial structure. You are in the process of watching governments being threatened by their incapacity and by people coming up and saying this is not okay. You don't have to agree with them, but there's movement away from the status quo, control, domination, and slavery. You're about to see some extraordinary events happen. And this is one of the reasons why in Mastering Alchemy we teach tools. And the tools allow you to stand in your own center with no engagement with all the noise around you and being able to observe it and choose an action. So as this all unfolds, that collective third dimensional consciousness, which is no longer in the third dimension but believes they are, they're all waking up. And they're not liking what they see because they're starting to listen to that internal guidance system within the heart that has always been there, but because we gave up our seniority to the external structuring and the rational mind's conditioning, we haven't paid attention to who I am for a very long time and lived our life from that vibration.
But it's interesting in what you're saying because I feel like for myself, and I'm just going to speak for myself, sure. I really live my life that way. I mean, I'm going to burn in hell and we're going to have the little animal sacrifice next week. And, all of those evil things that I apparently do, because I do what I'm led to do. But then it's some of the other things that you're talking about. It's like, okay, well, I haven't gotten there yet. And so as people are moving through this energy, will they find that, in this area, they're really kind of advanced, but in this area, they're a little retarded and they need to do some remedial work to catch up with the rest of themselves?
Absolutely. See, one of the things is we only know what we know and we don't know what we don't know. And this whole aspect of consciousness that we're talking about is unknown. Now, hear me clearly. It's unknown to the average person, except they know something is more. Inside every one of us, you look at this and you go, there's something better, there's something more, there's something that allows for me to have what I want, which is to laugh and smile and appreciate others and myself and the environment around me. But I don't have that. And so everybody knows that. But one of the things that happens is, remember that statement we said at the beginning, you can't take your baggage with you. And that baggage is vested in pain and fear. And so let's just put it this way as a simple statement, is somebody says to a third person, actually, let me do this. I'll explain how it works. You're walking down the street. You're in a great space. You're happy. You're very much aligned in your spiritual space because when you're happy, that's where you are. And somebody walks up to you and says, you have a funny nose. Mechanically, what happens is you kind of get a little bit knocked out of that space. You drop out of your ease into a space a little bit off balance, dis-ease, big hyphen, and you have a thought. Well, why did they say that? And then you immediately drop into the emotion and you make a decision that says, oh, this can't be a good thing. And then you do something very specific. Remember I said at the beginning, thoughts are electrical, emotions are magnetic. Let me give you an example. You know those big junkyard cranes that pick up buses and trucks? Simply what that is a block of steel hanging on an electrical wire, and it has magnetic properties, but it's not a magnet until you wrap the electrical wire around it one time. You create a weak magnetic field. But if you wrap it around 5, 10, 100, 1,000 times, you create a very powerful magnet. Now, thoughts are electrical, emotions are belief. Emotions are magnetic. So somebody says, Jim, you have a funny nose. I have a thought, electrical, and immediately I go, this isn't a good thing, and I drop in and I magnetize it, and then I start a process. Why did they say that? Could I be that bad? I'm not attractive. I don't fit. I'm never going to succeed. Nobody's going to like me. And we begin to wind that thought, electrical wire, around the emotion of this doesn't feel good. And we wrap it and we wrap it. And now we've got this thing in our awareness that doesn't feel very good. You can't hang on to that very long. So what a person does is they simply say, I can't deal with this anymore. I'm going to put it over here in a little box called denial. And then I'm going to be okay. But you keep looking at it and remembering it. So unconsciously, what you do is you say, little box of denial, I'll make you a deal. If you go back here on the shelf in unconsciousness, I will never, and not come out and bite me in the butt, I will never go anywhere near where somebody told me I wasn't okay. And so you begin to restrict yourself. But all that time, you now have an uncomfortable external expression of who you are that has nothing to do with you, sitting within your unconscious awareness, beginning to say to the law of attraction, this is what I believe. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. Oh, it definitely does. Well, and it just keeps us caught in our own stuff, just
Correct.
Cycling around.
Correct. See, so here, let me go back to time is collapsing into a singular moment, present time, where it's the only place you can make a choice. And at the same time, you can't take your baggage with you. So to answer the caller's question in a little more specific way, here, all this stuff, the wonderful part is the universe knows you don't remember where you put that stuff. The universe also knows it was never your stuff in the first place. You just accepted somebody's gift and then tried to figure out by the gift, what's wrong with me? And you've never succeeded in finding an answer because what other people think of you is none of your business. Your business is about your wonderfulness, your greatness, your happiness. But somebody handed you something that was ugly, and then you said, well, how bad can I be? And then you concentrate on trying to figure out how to solve this problem that was never yours in the first place. You can't take your baggage with you. But the universe knows you don't know where you stored that baggage, and the universe knows it's not yours. So hence, when you can get into a happy space, managing your energetic field, observing the world around you, and then choosing how to engage, in that fifth dimensional, happy, joyful, observant space, much of that baggage that never was yours is simply being eliminated from your storage system, your backpack, unbeknownst to you, until you have a feeling that pops up. And it says, why is my divorce of 25 years ago, which I thought I'd really spent thousands of dollars of therapy on and fixed myself, why is it coming up now? And the minute you grab a hold of that and ask that really bad question, why are you here? Everything stops and you begin to get an answer. Well, don't you remember? If you can simply not ask that question and realize, oh, this is the stuff that's leaving, and not ask, why are you here? Take a breath and just go, it's leaving. Turn your head, take a couple steps in another direction. Within seconds, you will not even remember having that thought. Because not only is it gone, there's no reflection in your energetic field of that thought at all.
It's that easy? Just bing, bam, boom, go away?
No, it's that simple.
Okay, it's that simple?
Yes, but it's not that easy. The reason is we have a lot of motion in that timeline that says, yes, but don't you remember when this happened, and probably will happen again if I don't pay attention to it. The rational mind, very conditional, very structured to keep you safe and have you fit in. And it will argue with you when you start to let go of things that it has created and structured and simply said, this is who you are. Trust me. Instead of listening to the rational mind, as you begin to get into present time and begin to create vibrational platforms of well-being, fifth dimension, all of a sudden that rational mind doesn't have as much of a hold on creating the word emotion so that it can justify its existence. Whole other topic, but consider that as a possibility.
Well, and I think just setting the kind of bigger global intention or I'm just trying to think of a different word because it really is a different kind of energy. Owning that that's something that you want to do. I mean, because they're setting the intention that you're going to allow that change to happen and it'll raise your awareness. But then I was thinking, like someone who comes to the deep felt realization that like they don't want to be overweight anymore, or they want to quit smoking, or they want to quit drinking, and there's really is that energy that people will hit where it's like, you know what, I can't do this anymore. And they embrace the change and they move through the change. And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like if we make that choice that I don't want to be that angry person that's stuck in my old baggage anymore, we might be able to embrace the opportunity to move through it and step through it, I want to say pretty effortlessly.
Well, I would like to agree, but I can't.
And that's okay.
Yeah, it is an effort, but I am agreeing with you. But I'm going to take a little different tact on this. See, how many times have you made a New Year's Eve resolution, and then, I'm being really simple, and then, 2 weeks later, you don't even remember it? How many times do you have an intention, and you don't even remember it? How many times during the day do you create a thought, and then simply don't even remember that you were going to go buy that quart of milk? One of the challenges with this is, and this will sound really preposterous until you really look at it, most of the thoughts that you think and most of the beliefs that you hold are not even yours. Now think about it in this context. You're sitting in a room right now and there is no television on, there's no radio on, but are you completely being passed through with thought waves, radio waves, television waves, unbeknownst to you? Yes. One of the things that happens, and this gets a little more complicated, although you and I could have a kind of a BPI conversation about this and understand it very clearly, is when you simply can't manage your space, you can't distinguish between, is that my thought or somebody else's thought? Think about all the thoughts that pass through you and you have random fleeting conversations with or opinions about. You're talking to yourself during the day. If you ever stop and say, where did that even come from? There's no real answer to it because it has nothing to do with you. And so,
wow, that's kind of like just gave me a little aha moment there, Jim.
Good.
Well, I mean, because I totally am aware of taking on other people's energy and, the impact of that, but not in that really fleeting. I always kind of think of it as like, taking on someone else's responsibility or mirroring their energy, kind of like bigger chunks of energy, but not just these little thoughts.
Second thoughts, the ones that happen every single second in present time. See, yeah, good find. But let me take it a little bit further.
Okay.
You understand this too, being a great clairvoyant reader, because you see it all the time from that perspective of being the good clairvoyant. One of the things that happens is when I'm out of my body, if you really look at when people are out of their body, they're in the past or they're in the future. They're not in present time. They left. You say to them, well, what happened when you were 4 years old? They go, oh, let me put my attention back there. And there they go. So you also know, as a good clairvoyant reader and a good empath, using that skill set, not as a unmanaged skill set, but you use it in a managed way, that what happens is people, they see, they hear, or they feel kinesthetically. And when somebody is unsure of themselves growing up often, and they use that little sonar machine in the second chakra, which is always sending out a pulse, and it receives an answer back. And the little machine says very specifically, very simply, what is that feeling? And it comes back, mad, glad, sad, happy. It's a vehicle, the empathic sonar second chakra device, that allows you to determine your relationship to emotion around you. But when you're a little kid and you've got a wild parent or people around you that simply say, sit down, and you sit down, and then they say, why are you sitting down? And you get these mixed messages, and you're off balance, confused, uncertain. One of the things that that little kid will do is change the game. And they do it very simply. The machine works perfect, but they simply change the question from what is that feeling out there to what is that feeling about me. Soon as you start to condition the world around you as a barometer about your well-being, empathetically, sympathetically, you can't even get to compassion, in that third dimensional reality, all of a sudden what was an angry person at something is now angry at you. Right?
I can see that. I mean, I never really thought about it. So it's kind of like, okay, I can see that. But you know what, Jim? I just looked at the clock. Man, we just barely even freaking started.
Yes. Very, very, very cool, huh?
Very cool. So we're just going to have to get you back on down the road because it was a good conversation and you got good stuff. I'm glad I had you on. But we need to wrap up because the music's going to come up in like a minute. Like this book, what do you mean the third dimension is going away? This is new, right?
Yeah, there's three parts to that book. One is, let me explain to you the three boxes in a more complete manner. The second part is, all right, you say there's tools. What are the tools? And so we give you about 10, 15 tools and explain them in the book, and then not only explain them, put a little QR code so you can go to a link on the computer website and sit there and listen to a 30-minute, 45-minute meditation instructing you how to use the tools. And then the third section is what the whole game on the planet is about, is relationship 2. Everything is about relationship. Not only relationship male-female, but how do you have relationship to everything going on around you? And it gives you a lot of explanation about male-female, how female energy is constructed, how male energy is constructed, and how it interfaces in a healthy, simple manner. Not in some deep psychological structure, but in simple terms. It's, if you look at it, you go, oh my God, that's so clear. So cool. You can get the book on Amazon, you can get the book at Mastering Alchemy, and we give lots of free lectures. We give more free information away than we do charge for things. So Mastering Alchemy.
Great, so that everyone should go there, check it out, see what's happening. I mean, this was really good. Yay. I like when it's good. And it was good.
Good.
And God said it was good. All right, Jim, I'm going to let you go because the music's going to come up. And thank you so much for coming on.
Rita, thank you for being here. I enjoyed being with you.
Good, thank you. And that's Jim Self, and his webpage is masteringalchemy.com. His book, What Do You Mean the Third Dimension is Going Away? And do check out his website with all his free stuff. And then next week here on Just Energy Radio, we have Hugh Newman coming on talking about the mystery of giants in North America. And in the second hour, we have Craig Campo Basso, one of those names that I'll never be able to pronounce, Campo Basso, talking about the stranger at the Pentagon. And so until next week, I'm Dr. Rita Louise. This is Just Energy Radio. Be blessed.
Join host Dr. Rita Louise each week at this time for Just Energy Radio. Point your browser